Godzilla vs. Kong from 2021. It's just another peaceful morning in the life of Kong, the Gorilla King. Now he lives in an artificial forest on Skull Island, at the base of the Monarch organization. Gia, a deaf girl that Kong saved as a baby, was always there to visit. But that day, something strange happens. For some mysterious reason, the gorilla revolts. He takes the trunk of a tree and throws it into the sky, damaging the biodome that kept that artificial forest running. Eileen Andrews, the scientist responsible for taking care of Kong, says that, despite the environment not being enough to support him, outside that place, the animal would be sentenced to death. Bernie is an engineer who dedicates his life to discovering the truth about the Titans and documents all of his findings in a podcast called Titan Truth. He has been undercover for 5 years at Apex Cybernetics, a multinational technology company. One day, while at work, he gets an opportunity to access the organization's confidential data. As he makes a copy of all that data, the emergency alarm goes off, alerting employees of a possible intrusion. The security team detects the presence of an enraged creature approaching the base. As workers organize to evacuate the place, Bernie heads to the opposite side, along with the soldiers who stayed there to stop the creature. Suddenly, an explosion happens. When he wakes up, the engineer spots Godzilla destroying the entire facility. The most intriguing thing is that, apparently, the monster had no reason to make that attack. Another curious fact is that only the cybernetic Apex HQ suffered damage, the entire area around it was spared. Madison Russell, daughter of Emma Russell, the scientist who antagonized the events of Godzilla 2, watched everything on the news. At the end of class, while returning to her house, the girl listens to the new episode of Titan Truth, where Bernie tells details of what happened during the attack. She then decides to go to the Monarch Company's relief camp to talk to her father about what happened. She says that the only explanation for Godzilla to attack the company is that there is some other Titan hiding inside, which made the King of Monsters feel intimidated. But Mark Russell doesn't listen to what his daughter has to say. That same night, Nathan Lind, a science professor at Denham University, receives a visit from Walter Simmons, the owner of Apex, and Ren Serizawa, the company's chief technology officer. After Godzilla's attack, they went there to summon Nathan on a mission in search of the Hollow Earth, which he had already written a book about. There was a theory that this was the birthplace of all the Titans, and Walter had found a way to get there. The Tycoon had created special aircraft capable of withstanding the pressure of that black hole. The only thing he needed was someone who could guide his team there. The scientist tells about the theory of genetic memory, which said that all Titans had within themselves the ability to find the way to return to the place where they came from. This means that, with the help of a Titan to show the way, they would be able to reach the Hollow Earth. Nathan then goes after Eileen and asks the woman to help him take Kong to his place of origin. He tells that the Apex had found in Antarctica an entrance to the Hollow Earth. With Kong's help, they could find their way there and return Kong to his true home, while also saving the Earth's surface from Godzilla's attacks. The woman is quite insecure about the idea, but it was still better to take a risk on this mission than to keep maintaining Kong trapped in that artificial habitat. As soon as Eileen agrees to embark on this challenge, Nathan calls his team to transport the gorilla to Antarctica. For that, a giant ship is needed, where Kong was chained and kept under high doses of sedative. Later, while the team was already on the high seas, Maya Simmons, daughter of Walter Simmons, arrives on the ship and introduces herself as an Apex representative. That night, Nathan informs them that they still have 48 hours to go until they reach Antarctica. Eileen is worried about a possible Godzilla attack. She says that the Titans have the ability to sense threats, and the King of Monsters has an ancient rivalry with Kong. According to legend, their ancestors faced each other in a great war, and if they do, it is very likely that there will be a fight so that they can prove their power. During the storm, Gia senses something strange and leaves her room. She walks out of the ship and notices that the gorilla is very nervous. The girl approaches him and manages to calm him down. Eileen arrives soon after and tries to get Jaw back inside the ship. He doesn't believe humans want to take him home. At that time, the scientist discovers that, all this time, Gia has managed to communicate with the animal through sign language, something she had been trying to do for 10 years, but Kong had never responded. While the ape is being taken to Antarctica, Madison meets her friend Josh, and together they set off in search of the mysterious man behind the Titan Truth. Despite having the podcast for 5 years, Bernie had never revealed his true identity, precisely because he was an Apex infiltrator. The girl intends to help him expose the company and discover the real reason Godzilla attacked the facility. After bribing a convenience store owner, the kids get the address of a guy who could be the author of the podcast. They arrive at a basement where Bernie lived. Madison introduces herself as Emma Russell's daughter, and the man immediately lets them in. They go to a coffee shop and Bernie opens up the whole game. The man tells about the files he found at the apex shortly before the place was attacked by Godzilla. He says that a gigantic cargo was being taken to the company's headquarters in Hong Kong, and inside it was very suspicious technology. The trio then decide to break into the apex in search of new clues. Later, during the night, Gia has a feeling that something bad is coming. She runs to look for Eileen, but can't find her in time. Alarms sound and crew members despair. The girl eventually finds Eileen and informs her that Godzilla is approaching. Kong goes crazy trying to get his chains off, but he can't get free. The scientist asks Nathan to free the gorilla so he can protect himself, but he doesn't want to risk losing Kong. If that happened, the mission would go down the drain. The ships begin to bombard the rapidly approaching creature, but Godzilla splits the ships in half. Some planes also approach to bomb it, but the monster uses its tail to destroy them, as if they were insects. By this time, Kong was already enraged, but the chains were too thick and the gorilla couldn't pull them off. At this point, he is completely defenseless against the Supreme Kaiju's attacks. Godzilla approaches from underneath the ship and manages to turn it hull up. Both Kong and the crew are about to drown, but Nathan manages to reach the lever and free the gorilla from the chains. Just then, Godzilla approaches and Kong manages to punch him away. He then lifts the ship, saving all the crew. He climbs on the boat and rips off his collar, through which the sedatives were applied. The animal jumps from ship to ship and uses the planes as weapons to attack its opponent. The overpowered lizard climbs onto the ship and Kong punches him with all his might. However, the animal retaliates by punching the gorilla in the face, which ends up falling. But Kong soon gets up and knocks the king of monsters back into the sea. As his last resort, Kaiju unleashes his atomic breath and destroys the ship completely. However, the Gorilla King manages to act in time and jumps into the sea before being hit. By doing so, he is at a disadvantage and the Kaiju manages to attack him. Kong gives the monster some kicks and tries to return to the surface, but Godzilla catches up and pulls him back to the bottom of the ocean. Eileen has an idea to help him. She asks the captain to release some depth charges to disorient the Kaiju. Her plan works and Kong manages to break free. Upon returning to the ship, the animal is completely out of strength. As it has been a long time without breathing, he is no longer able to continue the fight. So Nathan asks the captain to shut down the entire ship. His plan was for everyone to play dead so that Godzilla would believe he had won the fight. The strategy worked. The Kaiju sees that all the engines have stopped working and leaves. The problem now is to make the route to Antarctica because, if the ship were to work again, Godzilla would return to finish his work. The only way out is to finish the trip by plane. Meanwhile, Bernie, Madison and Josh begin their mission to break into Apex headquarters. The place was completely detonated after the attack and the trio manages to enter through a hole in the rubble. Everything had fallen apart, but Madison finds a secret elevator that is still intact. They enter through it and arrive at sublevel 33, where there are several transport pods. The group enters one of them to hide from one of the security guards who searched the place. Inside, there were some eggs of creatures that were captured from Skull Island. At that moment, the doors are locked and the capsule begins to be transported. The GPS informs them that they are being taken to Apex headquarters in Hong Kong. As for the other group, they finally make it to Antarctica. Dozens of planes are needed to transport Kong there. The animal was carried by a steel net that was attached to power cables. This was the only way to transport him without Godzilla attacking them. When the gorilla wakes up, he finds himself in a completely new place surrounded by snow. Gia is there waiting for him and the animal is happy to see her. The girl asks Kong to enter the tunnel that will take him to the Hollow Earth, but he refuses to do so. Eileen asks the girl to tell the gorilla that this was his home and inside he could find his family. Gia does so. And at that moment, Kong rushes towards the entrance to the Hollow Earth. Nathan and his team enter the anti-gravity vehicle developed by Apex and follow the gorilla. Upon reaching a certain point in the tunnel, Kong and the aircraft are pulled down due to gravity reversal. When crossing the barrier, they are launched directly into the interior of the planet. Vehicles lose control and go into free fall. Kong falls down a mountain and slips away until he has a contact surface to cling to. The crew is about to hit the ground and suffer an imminent death, but the commanders manage to regain control of the ship and everyone manages to save themselves. The gorilla comes down the mountain and runs towards the energy source of that place. He is so determined that he seems to already know the Hollow Earth, but in fact, it was his first time there. From inside the gravitational vehicles, the team sees spectacular creatures, impossible to be found anywhere else on the planet. As they followed Kong, one of the airships was attacked and destroyed by a winged serpent. The animal was about to devour the airship where Eileen and Gia were, but Kong manages to intervene. The gorilla grabs the snake by the tail and launches its body against the surface. He then uses the animal itself to take down a second oncoming snake. However, the monster survives and tries to strangle Kong, but the Delta team bombs the animal and the gorilla manages to break free. He eliminates the creature by slamming its body into the ground and then rips its head off to drink the blood. Kong continues his journey towards the energy core. Along the way, new mysterious creatures are revealed. At that moment, the trio composed of an engineer and 2 teenagers follows the tunnel that will take them to Hong Kong. Upon arriving there, they come across an arena, where titans were sent to fight each other. A few minutes after exploring the site, the group hears an alarm followed by an electronic voice announcing the battle to come. A platform takes a giant robot to the arena. This was a bizarre replica of Godzilla, only bigger and stronger. Ren was the one in charge of that robot. Walter orders his team to release test subject number 10, which was actually a 2-legged lizard that was captured from Skull Island. Upon being released, the animal runs towards the 3 intruders, but it's surprised by Mechagodzilla, who holds him by the arms and launches his beam of radioactive energy. Immobilized and unable to defend itself, the creature has its body torn in half and dies immediately. Ren informs Walter that the system has only reached 40% of its strength. The creator of Apex claims that once his team sends a sample from the Hollow Earth, its power outages will be over and the robot titan will be ready to wage its battle against Godzilla. Hearing this, Madison concludes that this was why the King of Monsters attacked the Apex facility. Back in the United States, Mark, Madison's father, receives news that Godzilla has made an abrupt change in his route and is rapidly approaching Hong Kong. A transport vehicle is now ready to take the scientist there. Back in Hollow Earth, Kong guides the team to a mountain of rocks surrounded by radioactive energy. They conclude that that is the center of the Hollow Earth. Kong opens the gates of the mountain that was actually the castle of the former ruler of that world. The place was empty and littered with the remnants of a war that had probably been going on for hundreds of years. Embedded in one of the skeletons scattered on the ground, Kong finds an axe, which he adopts as his new weapon. The team that accompanies him descends from their aircraft to explore that place. At that moment, they can contemplate Kong sitting on his throne. In Hong Kong, while trying to find a way out of that facility, the trio arrive at a room where the skull of Ghidorah, also known as Monster Zero, who had already been killed by Godzilla, was housed. Apex was using that creature's skeleton to control the Mechagodzilla. When Ghidorah was alive, his 3 heads communicate telepathically. Now Ren was using a skull to communicate with the other one inside the giant robot. In this way, the man could control it telepathically. By this time, the real Godzilla had already arrived in Hong Kong and was destroying everything that crossed his path. As the city was being evacuated, military personnel prepared to fight the King of Monsters. In the Hollow Earth, Kong's axe begins to glow and emanates an energy similar to Godzilla's atomic breath. The gorilla places his weapon on a rock and the axe begins to draw radiation from the core, as if reloading. The kaiju senses that something is up and begins releasing its atomic ray onto the Earth's surface in order to dig a hole deep enough to reach the Hollow Earth. At that moment, the Apex agents who were on the mission put a small robot on the ground to collect a sample of that energy and send it to the laboratory. Ren receives the energy signal and states that very soon they will be able to recreate it. Eileen tries to intervene, however, Maya declares that, from that moment on, the Hollow Earth was the property of the Apex and asks the guards to arrest the scientists. Seeing Gia in danger, the gorilla revolts, but is soon surprised by Godzilla's attack. Its atomic radius is about to hit the center of the planet. Maya orders her team to take her away, as they had already gotten what they wanted. A real war between monsters and humans takes place. Giant prehistoric birds appear to attack soldiers. Maya manages to get on the airship and escape with her team. The trio stays behind and is attacked as they try to get to the vehicle. However, ironically, they are saved by Godzilla's attack, which sends the creature flying. As the airship tries to leave that place, the gorilla gets in its way and Maya orders her team to shoot him. In doing so, Kong takes the vehicle and, after verifying that Gia was not inside, blows up the ship with his bare hands. He then takes his axe and goes to the surface to face the Titan lizard. The trio finally enters the aircraft and leaves behind him. Madison and her friends continue looking for a way out of the facility, but they are spotted by a scientist who calls the guards to arrest them. Kong finally manages to reach Hong Kong and prepares to face his biggest rival. He starts the battle, but ends up missing the first blow. Godzilla takes the opportunity to take him down. When he tries to hit his death ray, the monkey retaliates with a nice elbow. He then tries to rip the animal's jaw apart, but the kaiju manages to stop him with its atomic breath. Kong pushes the other titan away and lands a punch in his face, followed by a kick to the chest. While the kaiju is on the ground, Kong retrieves its axe and uses it to defend itself from the atomic breath. And so, he discovers that that energy, in fact, was the same energy he found in the Hollow Earth and served as fuel for his weapon. Godzilla then decides to attack him melee. The king of monsters manages to take down the gorilla that, even at a disadvantage, stabs the axe into the animal's leg. The kaiju removes the weapon from its body and launches it away. Kong now needs to escape its rays if he wants to survive. While jumping between buildings, he ends up getting hit in the back and is seriously injured. Nathan and his team arrive in the city with their airship and soon find themselves in battle. Their first challenge is to dodge Kong, and to be careful not to get hit by Godzilla's atomic breath. Kong rips out the top floor of a building and uses it as a shield to get his axe. Then he goes up to the kaiju with his weapon and gives the monster a nice blow to the head. Both are repelled by the attacks and destroy several buildings during their fall. At Apex headquarters, the trio are taken to Walter Simmons' room and invited to closely watch his masterpiece, the robot that would defeat Godzilla and become the new Alpha Titan, causing humanity to regain power on the planet. But the battle outside isn't over yet. Kong jumps on the giant lizard's back and lands several punches on the animal's head. However, Godzilla bites his arm and knocks him to the ground. As he is badly injured, the Gorilla King no longer has the strength to fight back. The monster tries to catch him, but Kong dodges and lands some kicks on his enemy. However, Godzilla is a relentless fighter and uses his claws to rip open the ape's abdomen. The kaiju starts crushing his chest and Kong can barely breathe. Godzilla lets out a roar to reassert himself as Alpha and Kong challenges him. However, seeing that its opponent is weakened and without strength to fight, the lizard leaves. Kong tries to get up and continue the battle, but his body won't let him. He then passes out as the giant lizard heads towards his next opponent. During Ren's connection to the Titan Apex, a system crash occurs and the monster takes on a life of its own. He is no longer controlled by man and starts to follow his own instincts. His first act is to eliminate Walter Simmons and the chief technology officer who controlled him. For this, the robot animal destroys the control room. Thus, he manages to eliminate both men at once. After doing so, he leaves the facility and goes after Godzilla. He still takes the opportunity to destroy the city along the way. Upon seeing the lizard, the machine begins to bombard him and the two engage in a deadly battle. To prevent the city from being completely destroyed, Josh tries to figure out the satellite's password and stop that monster. Nathan lands his vehicle next to Kong, and as they leave the ship, they are surprised to see Godzilla fighting his robot replica. Gia notices that the gorilla's heart is stopping and Nathan suggests using the Apex airship to release an electrical charge and stimulate its heart. This is the only chance to save him. Meanwhile, the battle was going on and the lizard was taking a big beating. The robot grabs Godzilla by the tail and easily launches him into buildings. They get into a power struggle with their atomic beams and the Titan Apex wins. At that moment, the Alpha Titan has just been defeated. Nathan lands the airship on Kong's chest and programs it to release all of its cargo. He gets out of there immediately, but is still hit by the blast. Kong gets up and is still disoriented. Gia approaches him and asks the gorilla to help Godzilla. He is reluctant and the girl says that the kaiju was not the enemy, but that robot. If Apex hadn't created that fighting machine, Godzilla would never have attacked them. The gorilla sees that the Titan is about to be annihilated, so he decides to help him. After getting his shoulder in place, Kong rushes to the battlefield and holds the robot just as it was about to kill Godzilla. In that instant, the two rivals unite to destroy the real enemy. They hold the robot by the arms and crash its body into a building. Kong kicks him in the head, but the machine bombards Godzilla and knocks him down. Actually, Mechagodzilla didn't want to attack Kong. His real goal was to destroy the Alpha Titan. To try to stop him, Kong retrieves his axe and lands several blows on the machine. The metal kaiju fights back and is about to use its tail to pierce the gorilla's skull. In the control room, a few minutes have passed and Josh can't find the satellite password, so the boy decides to use Bernie's drink to destroy the machine. At that time, the cyber kaiju is weakened and Kong tries to get rid of him. Godzilla uses his atomic breath to help the ape reload his axe. His blows are capable of ripping off the robot's limbs. When he finally manages to take him down, Kong rips his head off and eliminates him once and for all. Upon victory, the gorilla falls to the ground and passes out from exhaustion. The crowd takes to the streets and Madison is reunited with her father, who is surprised to see her there. Suddenly, Godzilla stands up and Kong prepares for another battle. But to his surprise, the kaiju doesn't want to fight anymore. His goal is just to reassert himself as an Alpha Titan. So the monkey drops his axe as a sign of surrender and Godzilla leaves. A few months passed and Monarch created a new monitoring station in the Hollow Earth. That way, Eileen, Nathan and Gia were able to stay close to Kong as he ruled the interior of the planet and Godzilla continued to control the surface.